Everyone, good morning. This is David Giordano. I'm the moderator for this session today. And you are in the session County Boundary and Reference Frame Updates by Gary Thompson. Just to introduce Gary real quick, but first a few housekeeping items. In the attendee hub, you'll see a chat window where you can enter your questions. You can type them in at any time. You don't have to wait until Gary's presentation is concluded. And then I'll go through and verbally ask those questions of Gary, and he can answer them. The second item is that the session is being recorded, and it will be available on the NCGIS conference YouTube channel not too long after the conclusion of the conference on Friday. So keep a lookout for those if you want to look through this presentation again, or one that you could not attend. Just to introduce Gary. Mr. Gary Thompson is the Deputy Risk Management Chief and Chief of the North Carolina Geodetic Survey in North Carolina Emergency Management. He has held a professional license as a professional land surveyor in North Carolina since 1980. He has served as president of both the North Carolina Society of Surveyors and the National Society of Professional Surveyors. He is an emeritus member of the North Carolina Board of Examiners and of North Carolina Board for Engineers and Surveyors, otherwise known as NCBs. So with that, Gary, please take it away.
All right. Thanks, David, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. So we'll be talking about two topics this morning. One, county boundaries, and the other is the reference frame update. And included in the reference frame update, we'll also talk about the retirement of the U.S. survey foot and what impact it will have here in North Carolina. So let's start out with talking about county boundaries. So North Carolina Geodetic Survey by General Statute 153-18 is tasked to assist counties when counties request our assistance to reestablish county boundaries when there's uncertainty or if there's a dispute between county boundaries. We also work, as you know, in the past, we've completed the reestablished of the North Carolina, South Carolina boundary. So both county boundaries and state boundaries. And when we work with the county, when we receive requests from counties, and in all cases, when we do not, we are kind of the independent party. So we work with counties when all the counties that are involved in the boundary, if it's a joint boundary to two counties, or if it's a boundary, a corner where there's three or more counties, all the counties that are involved must request our assistance. And then we'll move forward with the process of reestablishing the county boundary. So there's two statutes that we deal with when we work with county boundaries. One is 153A-17. And this statute basically says that county boundaries will remain the same until changed by law. So this means that two counties or multiple counties cannot decide to change their boundary unless they go to the General Assembly and get that enacted into law to make that change. The one we work with most often when we're working with county boundaries is 153A-18. And it has three sections, section A, B, and C. Section A is one we work with mostly, and in some following up slides, I'll go through the process that we utilize in 153-18A. Section B is if the work in A is not successful, then the counties can go to the court and work with a Superior Court judge to determine the uncertain county boundary or dispute county boundary. And section 3 deals with sections of county boundaries that are natural boundaries like ridge lines, rivers, streams. And it sets out a process of how we can work with those counties to reestablish those county boundaries using aerial imagery, LiDAR, and other things to map that county boundary. And so what, I guess the other question is, why is it important to know why county boundaries are accurate? So one of the important issues is taxation, property taxes. So general statutes require counties to only be able to tax within their boundaries. So it's very important to know where that boundary is for a parcel that may be adjacent to a county boundary, or it may be split by county boundary. In that case, if a parcel is split by a county boundary, the portion in county A and county B would be taxed appropriately for what areas in those county boundaries. So knowing where that county boundary is very important. Also, as development occurs, as far as building permits, school, it's important to know, and also for voting. So some very important criteria to know, have an accurate county boundary. And so we work very closely with the counties that request our assistance to reestablish county boundaries and put a survey on record so that it can be used in the future. And it can be used by not only the governmental agencies, but also by the public and by other that are doing construction, surveying along that county boundary. So 153A-18 is the process when there's an uncertain or disputed county boundary and the impacted counties request our assistance. We go through this process, and these are the steps that we use. So first is we must receive the request in writing. So it can be in the form of a letter. Sometimes counties adopt a resolution requesting our assistance, but some type of written request from a county manager, county commissioner, somebody in that county that has the authority to request that assistance. Once all the impacted counties have requested assistance, the counties then have the option of appointing a special commissioner to work with geodetic survey staff as we go through the process. Most of the time, that's somebody from the land records, tax department, the GIS department, or occasionally a commissioner. So it's someone that we can work with, provide the information to that special commissioner, and then they take it back to the county and share that information with them. Next step is to perform the research. So what we're looking to do is to find the legal definition of that county, and then do research to find what evidence there is of where that legal definition is, which involves research in a variety of places. In addition to the register of deeds, maybe clerk reports, state archives, letters to the governor. So there's a variety of places we'll go do research to look for evidence of how to, what is information that provides us where that legal boundary is for that county. And then in most cases, we go out, we have to do some field surveys, collect evidence, go out and see what we find in the research documents, see if there's evidence on the ground for what's in those documents. Once we've completed our research and what field surveys are required, we will then develop a report or a report of findings and a plat that we will share with the counties. In some cases where there are impacts to property owners, where especially jurisdictional impact, where they may have thought they were in one county and they're actually in the other, we'll work with the counties to hold public meetings. And those have been very successful in the past, that we can invite the impacted property owners to these public meetings, show them the information, explain to them why the changes or why they're being impacted, and show them the evidence and go through the process that they may have to work with the counties as far as documentation, if any is required. Once that's concluded, we'll provide a final report and plat to the counties. And the statute then requires that the counties adopt a resolution accepting our work, our survey work. That resolution is then put on the plat, and the plats are recorded in the register of deeds of all the impacted counties. In addition, we also share that survey data, that plat, with Secretary of State's office. Statute also requires or also allows that for some reason all the impacted counties do not adopt a resolution accepting the survey, there's a 1-year time period. So after 1 year, if all the counties that have been provided the survey plat have not adopted a resolution, then statutorily our office can then record the plat in the register of deeds. And 153A-18 says that now becomes the conclusive information about the location of the county boundary. And then we will share it with the Secretary of State's office and also record it in the register of deeds. We're also required to notify all the impacted property owners. So we'll send a letter out. In some cases, that letter will come from our office, or in some cases, we've sent those a joint letter from the county also. So we'll work with the county to determine the type of communications we'll have with the property owners. So that's the process of 153-18 that we'll go through. Time period it takes, it varies depending on what evidence we find, when was the last time the county boundary was surveyed, do we have to have public meetings? So it varies by each project that we work on. So this is just a kind of a status map that shows you which county boundaries have been resurveyed. The ones in green are the ones that have been surveyed and adopted by the state and the counties. As you can see, the entire North Carolina, South Carolina boundary has been completed. The light blue counties are ones that we have worked on form survey work and still in the process of working with the counties to adopt those. And then kind of the pink color is the ones that we're currently working on. So you see there's a lot of counties still left, a lot of county boundaries left to perform survey work and reestablish those. We also maintain a data layer of the status of all the work we've done. And this is, you can see the link here on the slide, and you can see which county boundaries have been completed in the data there. So all the information, the metadata will be with those surveys. If there's points along the survey boundary, all of the information will be included in the metadata. I would encourage you, if you're in this session and you're in a county, download the file and compare it to what you're using, and also compare it to your adjacent counties and see if there's any differences. If there are, contact us and we can work with you to look to see what steps need to be taken to alleviate those differences between what you're using, what your adjoining county is using, and what we have in our database. Our database contains a variety of information, all the metadata. The boundaries that we've resurveyed, the boundaries that may have been surveyed by earlier by the county or by another source, and then the best available data we have. Some county boundaries we have that's come from another source, so there'll be metadata with it to define what's the source of the data and where the information came from. So this is currently the surveys that we have in progress. The ones in green are the ones that we've submitted reports, and we're currently working with the counties to go through the final stages of that. The other counties are in different, you can see some of them in the research phase, some of them at different levels of work. As we work on county boundaries as we receive the requests. So we work in those in order as we receive those requests, and then work as more requests come in. So that's the update on county boundaries. If you have questions, our survey team here, Ron Hardin and Dave Ferrer, operate our county boundary program. Feel free to contact me or them if you have any questions, and we'll be glad to assist the county. And also, if you have questions about a state boundary, we have, as you know, we've completed the North Carolina, South Carolina boundary. We have information about our other Virginia, Tennessee, and Georgia boundary that we can share with you too if you have any questions. So now let's talk about the replacement of NAD 83 and NAD 88. The National Genetic Survey, to upgrade the National Spatial Reference System, will be replacing both NAD 83 and NAD 88. And it was originally scheduled to take place in 2022, but because of COVID, that's been delayed to no earlier than 2024, somewhere in the 2024 to 2025 time frame. So what's going to be replaced? So currently here in North Carolina, the continental United States, we horizontally, our reference frame is North American Datum 1983, 2011 realization. And vertically here in North Carolina, in the majority of the continental United States, except around the Great Lakes, we are using North American Vertical Datum 1988. And you can see the list of other vertical datums that are used in different parts of the country. And all those will be replaced with the new vertical datum in 2024. So the horizontal datum will be called the North American Terrestrial Reference Frame of 2022. And then you can see the reference frame for the other tectonic plate. So each tectonic plate will have its own reference frame. These will be, the coordinates will be fixed, but they will be updated. And the National Geodetic Survey hasn't made a decision yet on when the updates will be done. Will that be on a 5-year interval or a 10-year interval? And then the vertical datum will be the North American Pacific Geopotential Datum of 2022. And that will replace NAVD 88 here in North Carolina. So any mapping you're doing horizontally, vertically, this datum change will have an impact on you. And one of the things you can do to prepare for this change is to make sure you have metadata with your current data set. So once the new datums become legally active here in North Carolina, there will be transformation parameters in the software you use. But you need to have that metadata to know which datum you're going from to the new vertical datum. So it's very important to have metadata with all the information that you have. And then in addition to the new vertical datum, there will be a new geoid model that will be developed in the geoid 2022 that will be developed to be utilized with the new vertical datum. So just to give an approximation of what changes we can see. And so there'll be two components that will provide the change. One is the datum change, and also is we will be developing a new state plane coordinate system here in North Carolina. So at the time of the datum change, we will then go to the new North Carolina state plane coordinate system of 2022, which will also introduce some differences, mathematical differences in the coordinates. So horizontally, you can see here in North Carolina, we're approximately from the datum change horizontally about 1 meter. Ellipsoid height approximately 1.35 meters. And vertically approximately 0.25 meters, approximately 1 foot. And I think the vertical datum change will be more questions asked by the public because the impact of things like flood maps. So we'll see probably more questions with the vertical datum. So our new state plane coordinate system will replace our current state plane coordinate system. It will be referenced to the new terrestrial reference frame. And so we had two options here in North Carolina when we worked with the National Geodetic Survey to develop our new state plane coordinate system. One is to keep the coordinates close to our current state plane coordinates, which would require exceptions from the National Geodetic Survey to do that. And the second is to adhere to all their requirements and have large changes. And so we went with the second. And so you will see, and I'll show you slides, we'll have very large changes between our current state plane coordinate system and the new state plane coordinate system. Just a bit of history here. North Carolina was the first state to develop a state plane coordinate system. So we're kind of the birthplace of state plane coordinates. And this 1937 article here has information about the information that was sent to the Coast and Geodetic Survey at the time. So these are the characteristics of our new state plane coordinate system. One is to minimize distortion. So the goal is to have a more topographically fitting grid system. So the distortion from grid to ground can be reduced compared to what we have now. It'll be a one parallel system where we currently have a two parallel system. The nearest central parallel will be to the nearest arc minute. And you'll see when I go, you'll see that our current one is not. And the coordinates must change at least 10,000 meters. So you can see this big, large difference between our current one and our new state plane coordinate system. So this is our current state plane coordinate system. You can see it's a two parallel system. And so the area in green is the area where you have the less distortion from grid to ground. And you can see it where the standard parallels are, that's where you have the most. But a large portion of the state has larger distortion grid to ground. So this is our new state plane coordinate system. It's a one parallel system. You can see the central parallel is 35 degrees 15 minutes, whereas the old parallel was 35:15 and then 6 seconds. So we'll have that to the nearest minute. And you notice the green area, much more green area of that minimizes distortion in the state. And this is just a graph. So where the difference comes in is that we're changing our parameters from our current system to our new system. So currently, our false northern with our current state plane coordinate system is 0 meters. As you see, the new one will have a false northern of 200,000 meters. And our current false eastern is 2 million feet. And so the new will be 1 million meters. So this is where you'll see the large mathematical differences because of the change in the false northern and false eastern. We're really the only state when we went from NAD 27 to NAD 83 that did not change the false eastern. And that was because of our land records management program, with the impact it would have. So we've also worked with the National Geodetic Survey to come up with a solution for our land records program for the PIN numbers that they can will be able to utilize their current PIN system with the new 2020 datum so that we can minimize the impact to those land records programs. So there's a lot of work needs to be done to prepare for this. And one of the things is to collect gravity data. And we're currently, so gravity data is part of is used in the models for the new datums horizontally and vertically. And so we have some voids here in North Carolina. So this slide shows you on the left is a relative gravity meter. In the middle is just one of our gravity monuments that we've established. And on the right is an absolute gravity meter. And so we need the absolute gravity meter establishes starting points for the relative gravity meter. So we're currently working in Western North Carolina now, collecting gravity data. The other is what's called GPS on benchmarks. The National Geodetic Survey needs GNS observations on geodetic monuments that we have run geodetic leveling through. So they have heights determined by leveling. And so you can see that the ones in the yellow are priority A. So you can see the ones that we were asked to observe. And that's where we started in 2021, in early 2020. And this is where we are now. So we've accomplished about all of Western North Carolina. And we're currently working in Eastern North Carolina. And our goal is to get this all completed by the end of 2021. As I noted at the beginning, because of COVID, the release of the new datums has been delayed to 2024. And here's the public release, public notice about that. We've also developed a new conversion and transformation tool that you can get off their webpage. We'll do both single point and multi-point. And the models in this will be shared with the software vendors so that can be built into different software packages. So the last thing I'll talk about in the last few minutes is that also the U.S. survey foot will be retired. And North Carolina, by law, utilizes U.S. survey foot. And this is the Federal Register saying that the U.S. survey foot will be retired at the end of 2022. So there's 2 feet. There's international foot and U.S. survey foot. When you're working with small distances, as you can see, the difference is very small. But when you're dealing with state plane coordinates in the millions, it has a huge impact. For example, if I converted state plane coordinates, metric ones here in Raleigh, to feet using the international foot compared to U.S. survey foot, I would introduce about 4 to 5 foot of error. So it's very important to know which foot you're using. So they will make it official 2022. At the federal level, there'll be no option for the U.S. survey foot, except when you're using the old datums. They will continue to support that in working with the old datums. And they felt like this was the perfect opportunity to do that. So how did we get here? So in 1959, there was a Federal Register that said that the next time the National Geodetic Survey did a nationwide adjustment of the geodetic network, they would convert to the international foot. And that would have been when we do it to NAD 83, and that didn't occur. And this just shows you a timeline of some of the different, what has occurred over the years. From 1975, 1977, and then in 1988, there was a proposal to make the U.S. foot permanent and didn't occur. So it felt like now is the right time to make that change. And you can see here, these are states that the ones in the dark green are states, the U.S. survey foot, the blue are the states that currently use international foot. So you can see a majority of states use U.S. survey foot, including North Carolina. And so if you want more information about the datum change, you can go to the National Geodetic Survey's webpage, and there'll be more information about timelines and when this will occur. And with that, I'll conclude my session. I'll turn it back over to Dave for any questions.
Thanks, Gary. It's a lot of information, a lot of good information in there. During your presentation, a couple of questions have come in, and I'll just ask you to answer these as you can. Michael Herman asks, what happens if one county approves a resurvey change, but the adjacent one does not. He says he's noticed a gap in the Hoke-Robeson County line in the data and has seen that it's troublesome for GIS analysis.
Yeah, so with the current statute that's in place, which was modified about 4 or 5 years ago, what would occur is the counties have 1 year to accept the resurvey. And after 1 year, if one or all the counties have not accepted the survey, then our office has the authority by the legislation to record the plats. And then once they're recorded, that becomes the true definition of the county boundary. What has occurred in the past was that part of the statute was not in the law until we made this change about 4 or 5 years ago. So the previous law said that they couldn't be recorded to all counties adopted the resolution. But anything that we've got to request since that law has changed, then the process would be if they don't adopt it, then after 1 year, we would record the plats.
Another question from Andrew, and you may have touched on this a little bit, but there's something to elaborate. Please go ahead. He said, when it comes to county boundary disputes, you mentioned issues between North Carolina and South Carolina. If there's an area of the North Carolina-Georgia boundary that's a clear jurisdictional dispute or overlap between the involved counties and therefore the states, how would that process begin to get resolved?
So when you're dealing with a state boundary, there's a different statute that deals with state boundaries. In that case, both states would establish a boundary commission. And that's what we did the North Carolina-South Carolina boundary. North Carolina and South Carolina established boundary commissions, and then the two commissions work together to form the survey, do the research, and do the process. So it would, Georgia, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, it would require both states to create a boundary commission and then work together to reestablish the state boundary.
Okay. Another question from Raleigh Myers. Is there a process to communicate updated county boundaries to the Census Tiger program? Could you please describe it and how recently changes were delivered?
Right. So we work closely with the Census office here in North Carolina. And when there is a resurvey done, we share it with the Secretary of State's office and then also inform the census staff of a change. So we work to ensure that everyone that needs the information is made aware of any changes that occurred, or it may not be a change, just a reestablishment of the current boundary, but we keep everybody in the loop when we perform and final survey. And also, we also work with the Board of Elections and inform them when we completed a survey.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes left. Just trying to squeeze in a few more here. Shift gears to the datum part of your presentation, Gary. And the question is, the names of the datums as 2022 in it, is that going to change given the slide and the time frame of the implementation?
Haven't received an answer from the National Geodetic Survey, but I suspect it will remain 2022. Similar when we did NAT 83 and Innovate 88, they wasn't released exactly on this timeline, so I suspect they will stick with the 2022.
Any updates you can provide on the North Carolina Virginia resurvey and when that might be completed?
So there's discussion ongoing with North Carolina, Virginia to create boundary commissions. And so still in the discussion phase of that. We also have worked with the Virginia DOT to provide information. So at the present time, just discussion to hopefully move forward with a development and a resurvey of that boundary. And if anybody needs information about that, the section, kind of eastern end of that section of the county state boundary was last surveyed in the late 1800s. And we've recovered, I think, all but one of the monuments that was set there. So we have a lot of good information for that eastern portion. And then we have what we can provide you from that point westward, what information we have. But if you have questions, feel free to contact us.
Thanks, Gary. I think that's we got like 5 seconds left. Thanks everybody for attending. Please go to the YouTube channel for the conference if you want to see this presentation and others. And thanks to Gary Thompson again. Everybody have a good day.
All right. Thank you.